Good evening, all. We are blessed to be here one more time to experience what's on Jerome's mind 1860s project. Black History Month just ended, and during that month, we celebrated African Americans through social, economic, cultural, and political achievements. And we expressed conversations across generations, emphasizing wisdom and enlightenment that we wish to leave for our prodigy. Here on the first Tuesday in March, we enter National Women's Month, and we will be celebrating women's accomplishments, underscoring the Black and brown women in our families and in our community. My name is Okella Paige Trice, and I am indeed honored to be the host for today and to share with you genealogy journeys with my niece, Gina, Jerome's daughter, myself, and with an ancestor that you will meet later in the show. So we're going to begin with Gina, and I'm going to ask Gina about some of the intersections I remember between she and I over the years and see what her response might be. Okay, Gina, do you have any important events that you can recognize between the two of us?
um, Hot seat.
Hot seat.
First of all, let me say I'm very honored to be making my first appearance on What's on Jerome's Mind. So thank you for having me, Aunt Okella.
Well, of course, she would be my choice.
I I don't know how important this is, but I remember a family reunion in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Didn't we have a family reunion in
In
Los Angeles?
1977, yes. Sam and I co-host that. Yeah, you were a little girl.
That's a good memory.
The Paige great grandfather was at that reunion, Sam Paige.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when I pledged, aka
yes.
That's an intersection. The other, I mean, we've had a number of intersections during my African ancestry experience.
Yes,
whenever we come to Los Angeles, you're always there, front and center, and very willing to roll your sleeves up and help out. That's a Paige trait for sure.
That's a Paige trait for sure.
I think those are the ones that I can remember.
Okay, well, we're remembering some of the same, but the one that always strikes me first is the fact that you were at my wedding. I married September of 1967, and you were there, and your mother. So I track your age and the years of my marriage. That's how I keep those straight.
Okay.
Yeah. So you were there.
I wouldn't have remembered that one.
No, you wouldn't have remembered that one. But then the second one is that the 4th of July gathering that your father had years ago, pre-African ancestry, where you, your cousins, and other young people were sitting around having your Africanness talk. And there was beginning conversation for what now we know to be African ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
And that always stands out to me. A third one is, I believe you took flute lessons.
I did.
You did.
Wait a minute. You guys put my age out there. You put my child. Oh my goodness. Beware anybody who's coming on What's on Jerome's Mind. Okay. Yes, I did take flute lessons. I don't know, was I like in the 2nd grade or 3rd grade?
I don't even remember. But in terms of family togetherness and sharing, when you finished flute lessons, when you laid the flute down, Stephanie took up an interest. Your cousin took up an interest in flute lessons, and we still have the flute.
Wow. My father just found the lesson book, like the music book for the flute lessons. He found that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, we've had nobody else. And you and I both have the same middle name, I believe, Marie. Yeah, so we have, but I grew closer to you because I live in Los Angeles and I was not always back there when family gathered, but I grew closer to you when you came west and entered. You want to tell us what college you went to?
No, y'all done outed everything else. My life's an open
You
book
mean
on this.
nice
I
enough?
went to I attended Stanford University in Northern
Okay.
California.
Northern California. And you would come down and visit, not a lot, but you'd come in, we'd drive through the neighborhoods and you'd make comment on life and how close I lived to folks that quote unquote are affluent. You would want to know
Mm.
how that resonated with me. Never bothered me. I mean, just we were just blessed to be where be where we are. But then I was so honored that you called one day and told me you were pledging Alpha Kappa Alpha, the first African American female sorority. And then you called and you asked me if I would come up and pen. Now, you have no way of knowing how much angst that sent me through because I haven't been active since I left campus in 66. And so I was concerned that if I shared too much information, I knew they were going to tell me no. So I didn't know. It was a case of where you just don't up no information and you just go ahead, own what you're doing and do it. And that's what I did. Sam had his 1965 Volvo. Stephanie and Vanessa were in the back of the car and we rode up and I went in and I pinned you. And I was very honored. So then at that point, I saw myself as a big sister through a sorority, as well as an
Mm-hmm.
aunt. And I saw us come together that way. And I still remember, I still remember that. And one of the humorous things about that was because of your astuteness with life, when your pen came in, you saw a distinct difference in the way the pen that was given to me in 64 was made and the pen you received when you pledged. And you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know, could you keep my pen? You were not ashamed to ask that question. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, I do have my pen in my possession.
That answer was no.
So we've had these moments, and of course, when once African ancestry became full blown, as you said, we then had more than our fair share of interaction, because as it grew, you were out here in California, and I had no aversion to being available to help. I also think that you put a lot of humor in it because, as you would explain, and I do want you, after I finish this, to tell us just what African ancestry is. When you would explain what African ancestry does, people immediately would want to know about doing a paper trail. And one of the things you would always say is, you see that lady in the back of the room? She loves to talk. She'll help you find your paper trail. And there were a few people that would come and ask, but I do enjoy, and I will research for anybody. I get excited, just immensely excited, when people find their family. I know what it has done for me. And even in recent years, as we get through this show, I will be sharing some things. There's nothing like knowing who you are. There
I
is
have to
no
say, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
there's no amount of money that you can pay for that. I mean, Gates does his and people pay, but there's nothing like you doing that yourself. And you confirm it.
So I was just going to say, people often want to tell me their genealogy stories because they associate African ancestry with genealogy. And I'm always
Mm-hmm.
like, no, I'm not a
You're
genealogist.
not a
That
genius.
takes more patience and commitment and time than I'm than I'm willing to invest. And I always lift you up as the genealogist in the family.
And I appreciate it. And through the years, people get referred to me by you and other members of the family, and I'm the one that will sit and help figure out where we all fit in this forest that we belong to. But tell us about African ancestry and just what African ancestry does.
African ancestry is a complement to people's genealogical research. we are the pioneers of genetic ancestry tracing for Black people around the world. And it's our mission to help Black folks transform the way we view ourselves and the way we view Africa. And so while most of the country can use genealogical records like marriage records, birth certificates, death certificates, military records, newspaper articles, obituaries, Bibles, all those kinds of things, most Americans can have access to those types of records to recreate the names and the dates and the important life contributions of their family members that came before them. But as Black people, we don't have that luxury. We weren't even recorded in a federal census until 1870. And so what African ancestry does is it takes you beyond what you know about your family here or in the Caribbean or anywhere else in the world and where that ancestry was prior to the transatlantic slave trade. We do that through DNA. And so we find that it bridges the gap. It builds a bridge between us as Africans in the diaspora and our beginnings as Africans on the continent.
Yeah. And hopefully people are beginning to understand that better, because when you can get that total picture, I'll tell you, I get chills every time. I still get emotional about that kind of stuff. But going through this whole thing of COVID, how is African ancestry doing? Has it increased? Has it decreased with the folks that are ordering tests?
So I like to say that we're in the midst of a Black Pride renaissance.
I think so.
In that we are now, more and more people are exploring what it means to be Black, Black history, Black culture. And so we are benefiting from that desire for people to research their identities and the foundations of who they are. So we've been very fortunate to be able to continue to employ people during the pandemic, not having to shut down our business. We've had to, of course, pivot and make the necessary adjustments in working remotely. But there's even a silver lining to that, because that helped us to improve our operational efficiency. And so, yeah, we are proud to still be here 18 years later to help people with their identity journeys, Black people, their identity journeys.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, one of my next questions was, how does it feel to have mastered this for 18 years when all the stats show that brand new fledgling companies may not make it 5? And here you are, 18 years on the record. And can you share with us how many reveals you've done?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
That's fine. But what I can share the largest one on an African continent. How about that?
Okay.
So in terms of how it feels to be celebrating 18 years, it really depends on the day and the circumstance. So some days I feel like a dinosaur in small business years. Some days I feel like we're still a startup. But if you take a step back and you, like you said, you look at the continuum, I'm proud of being able to make that accomplishment. And when you really break it down, I'll say this, Okella. I used to judge success based on what I call, well, I might as well, what I call white people standards. So I judge business success, the success of our company, based on our profit, if we had profit, our revenue growth, the effectiveness of our marketing plan and tactics, things like that, right? But then I realized that we're not doing white people's work. We're doing African ancestors' work. And when you do African ancestors' work, then you have to judge success in a different way. Yeah. And so while, yes, revenue growth is important, and yes, net income is important, and all of those parts of the P&L are very important, the way I judge success now is that there are over 750,000 people who now have a connection to an African country. There are people who know another country in Africa that they never knew before, that know an ethnic group that they never knew before,
Yeah.
that have a sense of pride, place, and belonging because they know where they come from, that so many others don't yet have. And so when I look at it through that lens, I'm certainly very proud. And also to be able to employ an all Black staff. We're the only company with Black scientists, and all of our marketing partners are Black owned businesses. So and we try and use Black owned suppliers as much as possible. So for me, it's more than just our business. It's about the contribution that we've been able to make to the Black community at large. And
Yeah.
then in terms of the reveal, or wait, did you want to ask me something about that?
Well, later we're gonna possibly
Okay.
see what we can do around a reveal. But I was just curious if you knew how many you had done initially. But there's no
Yeah.
way to know.
Yeah. I don't think I
And
could count, but
that's okay. That's okay.
and what
We
a
know we
reveal is a reveal is when someone has taken our test and then they allow us to reveal or unveil their ancestry in a public setting to them for the first time. And we did do one during the year of the return in 2019. We traveled with the NAACP and the Adinkra group to Ghana, West Africa. We went from Jamestown, Virginia to Jamestown in Accra, Ghana. And on the sacred land of the Cape Coast Castle dungeon,
castles.
we revealed the ancestries of 80 of those people and their families.
Wow,
So
80.
that was,
Okay.
while I can't count the number we've done, that is one that I certainly remember
Remember
vividly.
and I, of course I'm partial, but that's to be commendable but I know the DNA and the fortitude that comes with you. So I'm not surprised. And we as a family know business is not an overnight success. It's those things that you put in, the work ethic, that you get up every day. And above all, when you're doing something that you love, you probably have more days than not where you are feeling up as opposed to feeling down. I mean, you're scheduling your day. You're not reporting to anybody else. You're doing, and you're doing, because we've done genealogy, you're doing what so many of your ancestors have done for hundreds of years. So we are following behind what we know. While the stories may not have been on a continuum for us to hear, it's amazing what comes out of you just because of who you are and your openness to receive those gifts and those talents. So I'm always goosebumps, and I'm always, as I hear about your cousins, as I see what my daughters and my granddaughter are doing, and while I can sit and say, oh, I see that from this line and I see that from that line, you all don't know, because all of a sudden, as the family genealogist, I have all that information in my head. And with the help of my siblings, we're going to get this stuff digitized so that anybody that wants to tap into it can, because as I say, it's almost a religious experience when you just know who you are. You know instinctively to who you are. And
I'm
I had a
reminded of a time, Okella. It was one Thanksgiving, and I'm not sure if you and Stephanie or Vanessa were there, but we were at grandmom's house, and both of your parents were still living, and all of your siblings and me and my cousin Hassan, we were sitting around the table trying to figure out who had a job, because you're trying to get the house next door and
yeah,
application required. So, and we were
exactly.
all like, nobody's sitting here. Uncle Victor was the only one who had a job.
Uh-huh.
And, but it made perfect sense, right? It made
Yeah,
perfect, at that moment, it was like, well, duh. It makes sense that Hassan and I would be at that table in the same position, because we were looking at generations sitting around
generations
the
of it.
table.
Right. We've
Yeah.
always been, I mean, the stories that go on and on and on about that which we come from, that is who we are. And if we open up, those the ancestors will speak to you. They talk to me all the time. People think I'm crazy, but I do listen to them. So, what are some of the new products that we can look forward to with African ancestry?
Well, we just launched in a couple things. We had a summit, a Remember Who You Are summit,
I
and that was
participated in
in
that.
September.
Uh-huh.
And so we have replays of that summit, which were incredible sessions across looking at identity through many different lenses, through Black business, through psychology, through travel and repatriation, uh, education, all that. And then we launched an identity box. So for people who aren't ready to take the leap all the way into DNA testing, and they're just kind of exploring, like, oh, I didn't learn Black history when I grew up, or my kids
Mm-hmm.
are in an environment where they're not really getting Black history, and we need to supplement that. We have an identity box that's full of a study, all kinds of tools to help you reflect on and engage in your identity as a person of African descent, not just post enslavement, but
Right.
going back 1,000 years. And then we have African ancestry family reunions that we're gearing to kick back off. We got sidetracked by
With
COVID,
COVID.
but
Yeah.
these are specially curated birthright journeys home. So in April, as a matter of fact, Kelly, you may not even know this, we're traveling to the country of Sierra Leone. They
Okay.
have formalized their citizenship process for people who have taken a DNA test and confirmed their maternal or paternal lineage is Sierra Leone. And so we're excited to be able to do that with
Well,
them.
that's exciting. That's exciting. And once again, I periodically get the opportunity to thank you and African ancestry because I had wondered and had prayed for years who would pick up this mantle. And I always wanted to be able to take one line, at least one line to Africa. This side of everything, we have 6 lines to Africa. And I don't have to worry because we now can, folks. I mean, I now have done, and I hope in the next few years to be able to. There's some people I think I need to try to test to get some other lines that are out there. But the more we know, the richer our lives would be. Now I am, and the family knows, and some of Jerome's listeners know. I finally have accepted the label family genealogist. And based on the years of research that I've done, I now can share today our ancestor. Her name is Drusilla Dungy. The Dungies I had a block with for years because when I first became aware of my father's people, I saw them in the census records as Dungians. And I'm hard headed like most folk. Even though the rest of the family, when we'd go down to Virginia, were always talking about the Dungies. And they would ask me questions, and I would say, well, I've only found William and Lizzie B as Dungeons. I don't know. So it was years. It was just about a year or two ago that here in the den, I was able to release that. A voice said, you want to find your people, you got to give up that name Dungeon. And sure enough, a plethora of stuff started to come: birth certificates, marriage license, death certificates, all this information on these dungeons. And then within the ether on the internet, plenty of white folks have done research. And one of them is a whole presentation of freed people of color down there in Virginia, Harper's Ferry, Prince Edward County, Brunswick, Virginia, Buckingham. And within this large vestige of information, you find the dungeons. And it turns out, fast forward with a packet that I had received on Dungeons that I had put on the shelf, that family packet and that information in the on the internet We all tie Suzette Dungy line to a woman named Frances Dungy, born in 1707. Her father, John Dungy, was born in 1685. Now, Frances had a son named John Dungy, born about 1727. He had a son named James Dungy, born about 1760, and he married a white woman named Elizabeth Fears. James and Elizabeth lived on land that was provided by a Randolph family who were cousins to Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson and this cousin had a had a bet. The Randolphs believed that these newly freed folks could have established, well lived lives if given the land and the resources to do it. Thomas Jefferson said, no, they will never do it. Well, they lived from a period of 1820 to 1830, thriving, being brick masons. They were ministers, they were teachers, they were gardeners, they were shoemakers, you name it, they were doing it, and life was doing just fine. And of that 400 acres, 100 to 200 of the acres, the ownership of the land was the Dungy family. Then it gets disrupted after the Civil War, but I mean, at the end of it, yeah, it gets disrupted after 1830 because the white supremacists, just pretty much what we're living now, came in and just started shooting in the homes and burning homes down and all that is life that we experience as descendants of enslaved people. But then James Dungy then birthed William Dungy, and William Dungy birthed another John. These names, these James and Johns, repeat over and over and over within this family. And so this John Dungy, born in 1835, is the father to William Merchant Dungy, who is my great great grandfather. Agnes Dungy is his daughter, who is my father's mother. So we now have all of these other lineages. I had found up through William Merchant, or actually to John. And then now that I released all this stuff, I now take us back to 1685. So,
Wow.
and then in terms of DNA, you know, your grandfather, my father did the DNA back in the inception of African ancestry, and he did the maternal and the fraternal line. But he did not do, we didn't have anybody to do the maternal line for the male Dungeons.
Right.
So we have the DNA for Agnes's mother, who was Lizzie B, which takes us back to the Yoruba in Nigeria. But this packet of information that I finally received, in terms of having it here and opening and letting the information go, that family had studied their ancestors. And they believe that maternal line to be the Hausa people, or some of them may have been from the Congo. So just from family history, we at least have that information. But the person we want to get to today is Drusilla. Drusilla's father, John William Dungy, he and my great grandfather John, great 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 grandfather John, they were cousins. So in essence, we all are cousins. But it will take more research to actually identify how many greats and how many generations we were. But it turns out all of those folk in that area are cousins. John William Dungy, Drusilla's father, they lived, and she was born in Harpers Ferry, Virginia. She was born in Harpers Ferry, Virginia, and the family lived in Virginia, but then they moved to Oklahoma. And so when the family got to Oklahoma, John William Dungy and his wife Lydia had 10 children. And the two most notable in that family is Drusilla and her brother Roscoe. Roscoe started the first African American newspaper in Oklahoma, covered the Greenwood bombing of Greenwood.
Wow.
Drusilla honed her writing chops as a contributor to the newspaper. Documentation shows she wrote over 3,000 articles. She became very much as she had seen done in her ancestry. She was very much an activist, and her articles were always on the mistreatment of Black men. They were on the miseducation that was taking place in the schools and women's rights. So she was about all of that all of her life. She eventually becomes the pillar and the cornerstone for most of the African ancestry study that's been done forever since 1926, when her first 2-volume book was published. She purchased a 2-volume book entitled Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire. So this helps you study and see what's going on in there. She did this, our ancestor did this with the help of no assistance. And then she became a notable amongst the folks that do African history. And so notables over time, I've discovered that there are all these notables that that have built their work on her work. People like Asa Hilliard, John G. Jackson, John Henry Clark, Yosef Ben Yehokaman. And then coming forward, I've discovered that Paul Coates and Anthony Browder knew her work. So she's out
Wow.
there, she's just out there. And of course, we didn't know anything about that because my father never talked about his family. And there are reasons for that. But it was even has received all kind of accolades. There was a crowning women's institute in New York where they recognized her. So it's interesting, like you talk about African ancestry, because people want to know more about their ancestry. More and more people are finding her work, and
That's
more people
amazing.
realize how pivotal she was for where folks are able now to find valid information that they can trust and know that in fact. But I find her just a phenomenal woman, and I'm so proud that I can say that I'm part of her DNA. But for you and for your cousins and folks to know, I mean, the Dungies literally were just academics. Drusilla's mother was an academic, and while Drusilla nor her mother went to college, because her mother was reared in the white folks' home, she was exposed to all of this, and she made sure her children had it all. They also were very financially sufficient folks until things went bad, but they were fine. And her brother Roscoe ended up taking care of the family later after her father died. He took care of the whole family. That's how much money they had. He took care of Drusilla, her husband, and 10 children. That's the kind
Wow.
of wealth we had back in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And, today, you'd be hard pressed, although more and more families are doing what we're doing, and we're looking to preserve property or figure out how do trust and figure out how you can leave stuff for the future so that the prodigy's not running around having to do the research I've done trying to figure out stuff. It will be more easily accessible to them to know if they're interested. Now, we know some folks are not interested, but I see Drusilla, because one compliment she got, or she was identified by one group of people back in the 1920s. She was as the person who mold, the people, the animal that digs up. She did the molding and the mining of all those ancient documents to provide the information necessary for folks to have a better understanding of who they are. I see African ancestry, you all doing the molding and the mining from the science perspective. And so we squarely stand on her shoulders. And
I think
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that that's what's important for people who are watching this, even though it's not your family that Okella just gave the history of. It's an important demonstration of how anything that we even think we want to do has already been done before. And you can probably find examples in your own family, but even if it's not in your own family, you can find examples in other families that prove to you what's possible. And so, besides the personal takeaways from this for me, I'm going to call Tony Browder right after this, let him know, and Mr. Coates for that matter, Paul Coates. I think the broader takeaway for any Black person watching this is that we absolutely can do whatever it is we want to do. We have demonstrated examples of success within our families or the families of people that we know and love. And so that's what's so exciting about the outcomes of genealogy research, the outcomes of genetic ancestry tracing is it gives you a foundation. It gives you a reminder. That's what history is about. It's not about living in the past. It's not about, you know, just dredging up old stuff for the sake of dredging up old stuff. It's about identifying what's already been done so that one, you don't have to do a lot of the legwork to redo it. And two, you have a starting point, a starting place from which you can do even more. And you can have the confidence that you can do it because you've already seen people who look like you do it.
And that's one of the things that I share with my granddaughter, Nora, your cousin, and any other young people that I have an opportunity to share the value of knowing. And Nora surprised me 2 weeks ago. She said, "Grandmother, they've been reading about racism and whatnot." She said, "I saw something that just disturbed me." She said, "They keep saying we're slaves when in fact we are the descendants of folks that were enslaved." I said, "Okay, my baby's got it." And so you don't have to feel uncomfortable. You don't have, and all you have to do in terms of the paper trail, once you get to the 1900 census, you know what your family was worth. And more of us than not, you see the value of their homes, how much cash they had. And we were more of us than, they paint this picture that we were all. Now, I know some folks had hard times, and even those that were back during slavery who worked in the homes or were indentured servants, their lives were in peril all the time, not just the slaves, but their lives were always. But there's something about having the confidence. And as we are into 2021, we know, as Gina said, nothing is new. This stuff has been done before. So if we understand history and we know that you can almost yourself predict what's coming next, and we as people need to continue to grow and learn and know so that we can continue to know how to maneuver on this planet with these people who still want to send us home. They brought us here, they mistreated us, and then they just want to toss us away. And then if they toss us away, and I saw a post one day on Facebook, a young woman said, "You send all the Black folks away. If they take everything they've given you, then you're back to square one."
Word.
So, but
And as my friend,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, as my friend Dr. Pamela Jolly reminds people repeatedly, we were the first assets in the
Yes,
United States.
we were the first. We were the first asset.
Our humanness, our people, our personness made us the first asset. So we are the fabric of what has made America
America,
what
America.
it is from an economic standpoint.
Yeah. And so we see that. And I even heard a conversational on public radio the other day. They were talking about the upheaval that we're experiencing where folks want to just take over the government. And that presenter on that talk show was saying this has happened every 80 years. So we can't be surprised when, or we shouldn't be surprised when we see stuff. But if we are cognizant of truth, we can weather the storm. So we have to continue to mold and mine and share so that others can grow and learn. And everybody's not going to receive at the same time, but eventually folks won't have questions. And if they can tap into African ancestry, or if they're family or friend and they want to call me, I have no aversion to help you find who you are. I get chills and celebrate just like it's my own family. But I'm going to go back to you now, Gina. You've been you're a successful entrepreneur. You're a strong Black woman. You I see you interact with your co vendors and whatnot that tap into you, and I've seen some of that, and I am appreciative of the demeanor and the way you all interact. But one other thing that we can tap in before time is up. I heard a story about you over the past couple of years of when you used to ride the public bus to school.
Uh-oh.
Oh
Which
no,
story is this that you
this
heard?
is the one. This is the one where you kind of became the bus monitor of the mom of the group, so so that you would make sure the kids got off at the right stop and so they could be on their way. And so there again, I see in you what I see in as I do my history. We have been people that cared and extended ourselves and helped our neighbor, or a stranger. I mean, I've been out if somebody I mean, I haven't worked at Kaiser Permanente in years, but if I'm down there and things have changed and somebody need directions, I give directions just like I work there. That's just, who we are. But more of us as descendants of enslaved people are like that. The media just chooses not to show that temperament. They don't want the positive, good stories. And yet, most of the world wants what we give. And so that whole dissonance can be very confusing for the young people on any given day. Any given day.
Yeah, that's why we have to know what we're worth. Everybody else knows what we're worth. We're
Right.
the
They
ones who
definitely.
who
We the
don't
ones that
know
don't. And so we
what
have to
we're worth.
build that understanding. And if folks that have not done their genealogy can take the time and go find probate records and wills, and you see the value they placed on each of us, from babies to old men. It just sends I mean, and we were listed, and that's the only way through the paper trail you can find out who your people were tied to with as a slave owner. You have to be able to identify the slave owner. Then you have to be able to pull forth the probate records and the wills. And when you get to going through that and you see we're listed with all the dishes and the flour and the pots and pans and the
Assets.
horses, and yeah, we're all at we it all equals to us being assets. And so unequivocally, and as Drusilla, she unapologetically wrote her book on African history. She was very strong and determined that the world would know true stories. And the larger of these two books has pictures. So this is it's a study. As I've read, initially when I ordered the books, I was confused. I said, "Why do I have two books?" But now that I've done more research, you see, these are study guides. And so one has pictures, one just has words, and she explains various things. And so I'm sure when you talk to Tony, some of what Tony does is based on your cousin's work that was published in 1926.
It's amazing.
Amazing. So I enjoy being a genealogist. I enjoy and appreciate you as my niece. And I don't get tap into everything, but I can do a happy dance any day of the week. I no longer worry about or find myself in a conversation. Oh, I wish I could figure out where I come from. I know. Not only do I know because I let that block get out of my way, I actually have here in my binder the original paperwork that I got in back in the 1990s, and I just did what people do. I kept saying, those folks want to claim their Indian heritage. I don't know nothing about being no Indian. But fast forward, not only do I know, and for the benefit of the family, we are Pamunkey. There's a young woman who her first name Jasmine, I remember she wrote an article back last year where she had written to Congress. She was trying to get the Congress to help get the Dungeys, who are Pamunkey Indian, reinstated to the tribe. They had been ousted. One of the other things that I learned when they had these wars and they sent the men off, they didn't send the women. So who were the women left to interact with, but the black men and the white men. That's part of what happened. And so the American government went to the Pamunkey Indians and said, you will stop educating your black relatives and you will stop educating the Indians, or we will take your land. Now, what did they do? They took the land anyway. And in 2020, or since the teens, the Pamunkey Indians are fighting for their right to reclaim their heritage as Native American Indians. And through that line, this family of Dungeys go back to the 1500s.
Wow.
So America belongs to us. And I very proudly am able to stand and say that and share. But I have so enjoyed this opportunity to chat with you.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you. I want to publicly thank you for everybody who watches this. Thank you for doing all that work because it's not easy. What we do is so much easier than what you do, and so um, certainly your findings have been very impactful for me and the rest of our family. So thank you
well,
for
I
listening to
appreciate
the
it.
call. And I also, nobody knows that I was going to do this, but I just set up a code, a discount code
Uh-huh.
for What's on Jerome's
What's
Mind
on Jerome's mind?
listeners and viewers. So it's not off of an African ancestry test kit, Ties off of the entire site. So 5% off of the entire AfricanAncestry.com site. Unless it's already a discount. If there's already a discount, you don't get an additional discount. But I just want to encourage everybody, if you want to rock an African ancestry t-shirt, or if you want to get an identity box, or if you want to see the modern day a mask, or the modern day a pendant to everything, a modern day study guide, what today's study guide looks like before I knew I was connected to Drusilla Dungy. You can use this 5% towards a test kit or anything on our site, and we'll leave it on. We'll have it good through June 30th. So you have some time to take advantage of the offer. And again, thank you for. I'm honored to be the first guest for Her Stories
Well,
on
see here
What's
again,
on Jerome's Mind.
we intersect one more time. You're the first. This is your
Oh
first
yeah,
time as a guest. This is the first time I'm honored that Jerome allowed me to be a host. So we're
nice.
first again together. So, uh,
And you
and
didn't
I,
mention when you were telling all my business, you didn't mention that I'm the first and favorite Paige
Paige
grandchild.
grandchild and
Yeah.
niece. I did not do that. Yes, but
And niece, yeah.
Gina and I have that in common. She's the oldest grandchild. I'm the oldest child. So we have all of these connections, which we appreciate and have valued over the years. And we look forward to many more times to be able to share, to learn, and to grow. And in the Dungy family, as well as all of the other lines that I'm familiar with, The folks believed in family, they believed in prayer, and they required us as descendants of theirs to understand that we are to be living our African ancestry 365 days a year. So thank you, Gina, niece
Thank
Gina,
you.
Sarah, sister Sarah, and I look forward to interacting with you soon. Hopefully folks can get back to flying and I can get back on back on the East Coast. But this has truly been a pleasure and a blessing. And thank you to all the listeners. Do take advantage of the 5% discount for African ancestry. You will have done yourself a favor. If any of you ever need help on tracing the paper trail, please give me a call. Jerome has my number, and I will do whatever I can to help you feel stronger, feel better, and be more comfortable in who you are and knowing who your people are. Have a good night.
Bye.